Hi, I'm Tacey Goheen, Community Services Director, and welcome to part 2 of our Healthy Dynamics series for the Beauty of the Earth, featuring our grounds here at Still Hopes, some lovely areas, and particularly featuring our grounds supervisor, Chris Spearen. Chris is going to take us on a tour today of the main entrance, areas around Building 6, around Building 5, the Evergreen and Trinity buildings, and just a great tour and be able to answer questions that you all have submitted. So stay tuned and welcome.
Well, good morning again. Chris Spearen here, Landscape Supervisor for Still Hopes Retirement Community. From our last segment, we've had some questions from our residents concerning the identification of various plants around the campus. So I'm here this morning doing another talk and walkthrough of the grounds, and we'll go over some of those questions. Actually, we'll go over all of those questions, and we'll talk about the plants and some of the other things going on around the campus, and hope everybody enjoys it. So we had a couple of questions about the plantings around the front side of McDowell, and a request to write down the names of the plants so you guys could all understand without me having to speak and spell everything out, the names of the different plants here. Here on my left is a angel's trumpet plant that's called Cherub, and it has these wonderful pinkish colored bell-shaped flowers. It's more of like a coral color. These plants are native to South America, but in South America they're kind of like an evergreen small tree, but here in the Midlands of South Carolina they're a dieback perennial. They'll get 6, 7, 8 feet tall over time. And throughout the late summer through fall until the frost hits it, it is just smothered in these wonderfully colored bell-shaped flowers. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of varieties of this plant. This is one that I grew from a cutting. As you can see around the base of the plant, I've actually stuck some cuttings in the ground to get these to start to root. I did that during our last segment. And the stem that I put in the ground during the last segment had actually already rooted. And I dug that up and actually gave that to one of my coworkers. So we've got a few more stuck in the ground, and these will root over the course of the fall, and then I'll spread this plant out over the rest of the campus so it can be enjoyed elsewhere around our grounds here. Right in front of the Cherub Angel's Trumpet, we've got another plant. And this is another question about the white shrub in front of McDowell. This is not actually a true shrub. This is actually an annual, believe it or not. This is a plant called Euphorbia Snow in Summer. It's a bedding plant that I use. It is not hardy here typically, but what we're going to do is all of the Euphorbia Snow in Summers that we've got planted around here, we're going to cut those back to the ground and leave them in the ground to see if they'll come back next spring. Oftentimes, plants that are sold as annuals here will oftentimes grow throughout the year and come back, and even though the frost might kill them back some, they'll come back the following season. A good example is Gerber daisies, for instance. They're sold at different nurseries around the state as annuals, but Gerber daisies perennialize perfectly well here in South Carolina, at least here in the Midlands and further south. So we're going to try that with these euphorbias. We'll cut them back when the frost hits them, and we'll see if they come back next spring. They should. With the cover of this awning here and the mild winters we've been having, they should come back next year. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so we had a question from one of the residents about significant or unusual trees around the campus. This is one that I get a lot of questions about. The Latin name on this tree is Paulownia tomentosa, but the common name is princess tree. Princess tree is the common name of this guy right here. This is an incredibly fast-growing tree. I've been here as an employee of Still Hopes for about 3 years now, and when I first arrived on this campus, this tree was probably no more than 6 or 7 feet tall. And you can see in the course of 3 years how quickly this tree has grown. It's a wonderful tree. It has these lavender blue flowers in the spring and summertime, and it has these big tropical type leaves, and it's just a wonderful, unusual tree to use in South Carolina. You do have to be relatively careful where you plant this tree. If you look where I'm standing, this is one of the roots of the tree. The roots can be pretty invasive as far as if you were to plant this around a sidewalk or around a door or around a house, the roots will actually buckle the sidewalk. So you have to be careful where you place it. But this is actually the perfect location for this tree. It's further enough away from the patio gardens, from the walkways, and from other structures where the roots won't damage anything. But you can see how quickly this tree has grown, not only the tree itself, but the roots itself too. So this root that I'm standing on right now, it's about the thickness of my thigh, and probably a quarter of it is above ground. So you can imagine what that root would do to a sidewalk or some pavement. So aside from placement, it's a great tree, pest resistant, disease resistant, drought resistant, fast grower, beautiful flowers in the spring and summer. Wonderful tree. And this one is, again, it's called Princess Tree. Okay, so another question we had as far as the identification of some of the plants around here were the trees behind Building 5 that had fig-like fruit. I'm standing next to one of the two trees. This is a red buckeye. This is a native buckeye tree. It has red flowers in the early spring to mid-spring to even into June. And then it's followed by these fruits that hang off of it with these wonderful glossy seeds. So let me take one of these seeds out. And that's a buckeye seed. And there's an old, I guess, saying that if you carry around a buckeye tree in your pocket, it'll bring you good luck. But they're gorgeous, gorgeous seeds. In the wild, deer would eat these seeds, maybe some larger mammals like bears or something like that. But here on the campus, we don't have anything that would eat these seeds. We occasionally get seedlings that come up, but most of the seeds actually do not germinate. But it's a wonderful ornamental tree. It's a small tree that's easily managed. This one behind me here that hasn't quite lost its leaves, you can see how tall this one is. And they'll get a little bit taller than this. They'll max out at around 20 feet tall by about 15 feet wide. So again, these are red buckeye trees. So another question we had was in regards to the water lilies that were in the two ponds, not just this pond that we're standing at, but the pond behind Cottage 1000 over there in the distance. The question was, would the water lilies return? And the answer to that question is yes, they will, and they've already begun to return. If you look where I'm pointing, those heart-shaped leaves, those are the water lilies returning. They're coming up along the edge of both ponds right now. Unfortunately, earlier this summer, we had an outbreak of this really invasive weed called duckweed. Duckweed is an aquatic weed that has these tiny little leaves, and it spreads very, very rapidly, and it looks like a carpet of algae that grows over the pond. And it took over about a third of the pond behind Cottage 1000 and was beginning to creep around the pond that I'm standing at right now. So we had to come in with an aquatic herbicide and spray all the invasive duckweed. And when doing so, we managed to kill some of the water lilies too. But again, as you can see, the water lilies are indeed returning. We got rid of the duckweed, and next spring, we'll have more of these water lilies return, and they grow quickly. So I would imagine by midsummer of next year, most, if not all, of the water lilies that disappeared from the spraying will have returned by that point. So yep, water lilies are here to stay. Another identification question we had was the trees in front of Building 6. And I'm standing underneath one of these trees right now. These are called Layspark Elms. These are native to Asia, but they grow perfectly well here in Columbia, South Carolina. They get the name Layspark Elm from this peeling bark that the mature trees develop. You can see the old bark is kind of gray, and the new wood underneath it is this really pretty cinnamon color. So it almost has like a lacy-like appearance to the trunks of the trees. Very, very easy to maintain, fast-growing, pest and disease maintenance, or pest and disease-free trees. The one thing that is kind of a maintenance issue with these trees is that they will tend to seed in everywhere. So we have seedling elm trees that we have to routinely pull out of the surrounding shrubs all around the campus. But aside from that, very easy to grow and very easy to maintain tree. And again, this is Layspark elm tree. All right, so we had a question about improving the soil quality, and in particular, this was a question about in front of Building 4, McDowell, one of the beds that we originally renovated about a year ago. And the question was, how do I make the soil so healthy and the plants grow so well in these areas that we're renovating? The answer to that question is compost, compost, and compost. We started generating our own compost here on site. We've got a small clearing that's in a discrete location in our forest. And what we do is we take all of our old pine straw, we take all of our old leaf litter, any of the annuals that we pull up, these pumpkins in the bed, when they start to rot, we throw those in the compost. And we turn that compost, we have a big, what's called a bobcat skid steer. It's a big front end loader with a big bucket. And we scoop up that material, and we turn it over. And over a period of about 6 months, it breaks down into this wonderful soil amendment. Compost is easy to maintain, it's easy to make, and it benefits the grounds tremendously. It saves us money. We don't have to pay to have this material hauled off, nor do we have to buy our soil amendments anymore. We make it here on site, and it takes no time at all to make it. So what I do when I renovate a new bed is I'll take out any of the existing plants that we need to remove. I'll bring in big, huge, like a trailer load even, of compost that we make here. And I'll spread that compost out over the entire area that we're planting. Some people, when they plant a new plant, they oftentimes don't amend the soil. They don't add compost to the soil, or if they do, they just add a little bit to where they're planting. What I do is I amend the whole area that we're planting. I believe that healthy plants and healthy gardens are built from the roots up. So making compost here has greatly impacted the health of our campus here, of the plants on our campus. So these beds right through here, we're at the main entrance right off of Noxavet Drive. We put out compost in all of these beds around the signage, underneath these crepe myrtle trees, and around the directional sign over here across the street. And then we planted several evergreen plants. From my last tour, we talked about the farfugiums here. We've got some of these. We've got one of our native palms. This is a silver saw palmetto, which is native to the coastal counties of South Carolina. And then I've got some purple pansies. I've got some orange pumpkins that were grown here in South Carolina. And then I've got some leaf castings. So we've had many comments about these. So what I've done here is I've taken some of our elephant ears in this case, and I cut a leaf off the elephant ears. I lay it in sand, and then I mix up some concrete. I put the concrete over the leaf. I'll let it dry for 2 or 3 days. I'll flip the leaf over, and I'll peel the leaf off of the concrete, and the leaf will leave a perfect imprint on the concrete. Then I go back, I'll spray paint the leaf, and then we'll paint the veins different colors. So we have various sizes of the elephant ears in here. We've got a couple of other leaves in these beds too that we made the castings out of. And it's just a very easy, inexpensive, quick way to add some color and add just some pop to a flower bed. So we added these leaf castings to the main entrance here, and also to our flower beds in front of the main entrance to the mansion too. I also, I like orange, I like purple, I like blues. So what's more orange than a pumpkin? So I brought some pumpkins in and kind of spaced them out almost like Easter eggs in the flower beds up here. So we've got a dozen or so pumpkins kind of scattered out throughout the flower beds, and we'll leave those in throughout the rest of the fall until they start to break down, and then we'll remove them and put them in our compost pile. So another question was the identification of the trees behind Building 6. So I'm standing underneath one of the trees. This is a Japanese cherry tree. These typically flower late winter, early spring. So they'll start to flower as early as late February, early March, and they will continue to bloom through April. So they'll flower for about 6 weeks. A lot of the trees that grow in Asia grow perfectly well here. We're in a very similar agricultural climate with Japan and other parts of Asia. So a lot of their ornamental trees we can grow here and vice versa. So oftentimes you'll see gardens in Japan and they'll have like southern magnolias in them, for instance. So our climate is very, very comparable to much of the region where we get these Asian plants from. Right next to it over here is a red maple. For me, red maples typically don't do as well this far south as they would further north. Red maples are native all over the East Coast, from the southeastern US and the upstate all the way up through southern Canada. And here in the Midlands, a lot of the red maples tend to struggle with our heat and humidity during the summertime. So if you look at the trunk of this tree, they'll get different kinds of blight and heat-related stress and disease. So you can kind of see this bark that's peeling off and these large kind of wounds in the tree. This is not normal for these trees. We have to come in here and clean out the dead out of the canopy quite often. My opinion is this is not a suitable tree to grow in the Midlands of South Carolina. It's just too hot and humid for them here. But there are other types of maples that do well here. Right next to us, we have a Japanese maple with the purple leaves. And these grow great here in South Carolina. We've got probably half a dozen varieties of Japanese maples that we grow here at Still Hopes. And this is one called Bloodgood right here. Bloodgood is a very common purple leaf Japanese maple that the leaves will turn red in the fall. They're just gorgeous and they are perfectly hardy here. So another question we had was large flowering gardenias. Some of the older varieties of gardenias that we can grow here on the Still Hopes campus. This is one called August Beauty. This is, I guess you would call the quintessential large flower gardenia. I planted 3 of these in the back of this bed about 2 years ago. We renovated this little section right through here. There were some azaleas in here that had died back, and we removed the azaleas. We planted these gardenias, Allura petalum right here with the purple leaves, and this wonderful creeping rosemary along the edge. So these gardenias, they have the large double flowers. They're about the size of a silver dollar. And they're just a great fragrant gardenia. We do have some of these planted around the cottages. Cottage 1010, for instance. There's some on the right side of Cottage 1010. And there probably are a few others that I can't think of right off the top of my head, but I know we've got other specimens of these large flowering gardenias around the campus, and I would love to add more. They just do great here, and again, they're very, very fragrant. Some of the other general questions were the plantings around the new sidewalk, which that new sidewalk, it starts behind, I guess, Cottage 1000 and goes behind our maintenance shop to Rose Gardens over in that direction, and some of the new plantings around there. My overall goal with that planting around there was something that was going to be very, very low maintenance and would also have plants of different textures and colors. So you'll have grass-like plants. We have muley grass or sweetgrass, which has these wonderful purple pink plumes of flowers this time of year. We have some, they're called glory bushes. They have blue flowers that are really nice. And then we have some evergreens. We've got bottle brushes over there. This is a bottle brush right here, as a matter of fact. This is one of the few plants from Australia that we grow. You can see where it gets its name. The flowers are kind of in the shape of a bottle brush. This one is red flowering. There are some that are yellow, some that are white flowering, but this is the red flowering bottle brush shrub. And this is the evergreen, and it flowers continuously throughout the summer. So those are some of the plantings that we have around the new walkway, I'm sorry. And general overall plan, From my point of view, it's about introducing more variety, different kinds of plants around the campus, incorporating native plants around the campus. There are plenty of native plants that we could be growing around the campus too. Just doing things a little bit different, selecting different varieties of plants, and also having a larger plant palette to select from. Having plants that bloom at different times of the year is very, very important, because we live in a perfect agricultural zone where we can grow plants that flower virtually every season of the year. So there are a number of things I would like to do, and we're working on it.
Thank you all for being with us. Don't forget to check your boxes for your chocolate. As a participant in Healthy Dynamics, we always like to provide a little goodie and nourishment for you, so check your internal mailboxes. Thank you again for being here and just being a part of this program today, and sending your questions and helping us to make it just a wonderful and informative program. Stay tuned as well next month in November, when we will do a COVID-19 update with the latest and some glimpse into the future, sort of where we've come and where we're potentially going with the COVID information. Thank you so much. Have a great day.